The desert highway runs flat for 100 miles in every direction, and Walter Hennessy is the only thing moving on it. The sun is low. His old panhead is humming under him like a thing half asleep. He has been riding 9 hours, and he has not spoken a word to a single human being. He has not wanted to. Today is the day his wife has been gone exactly 1 year, and he climbed onto the bike at dawn because the house was full of her and empty of her at the same time, and he could not stand to be inside it one more hour. Now here's the thing. When he glances in his cracked rearview mirror, he sees a shape on the shoulder behind him. A dark shape. Running. Not a coyote. A dog. A big one. Ears up. Tongue out. It is keeping pace with a man on a motorcycle in the open desert, and that is not something dogs do. Stay with me, because the next 200 miles are going to change what is left of this man's life, and he doesn't know it yet. Let me back up. They called him Wolf almost all his adult life. Wolf Hennessy. He was a road captain for 30 years for a long-haul club that ran from Phoenix up through Flagstaff and into Utah and back. He rode lead. He knew every fuel stop, every dry creek, every cop who could be trusted and everyone who could not. He was good at watching out for other men. That is what a road captain does. You ride 100 feet out in front, and you bring the boys home. Wolf brought the boys home, every run for 3 decades. Then 4 years ago he stopped. He didn't fight with anybody. He just stopped showing up. The patches came off the vest. He kissed his wife Marin on the forehead one Sunday morning and said, "I'm done with the club." She said, "All right." She didn't ask him why. She knew why. Their friend Pete had gone down on a wet curve outside Prescott, and Wolf had been the first to him, and Pete had died with his head in Wolf's lap, and after that, the long rides had a different taste. So he became what bikers call a lone biker. No chapter. No patches. Just him and the panhead, and a small red fuel can strap to the back rack. Marin understood. She always understood. She taught 4th grade for 38 years. She wore her hair short. She liked black coffee. She read paperback mysteries on the porch. They had no children. They had tried years back, and it had not happened, and they stopped trying and they did not talk about it. They had each other. That had been enough. Then a year and 4 months ago, Marin went to the doctor because her back hurt. 2 weeks later, they had a name for it. Pancreatic. Stage 4. 6 months, the doctor said. She made it 5. She died in their bedroom in the early hours of a Tuesday in April with Wolf's hand in her hand, and a paperback mystery open on the bedside table, and the world tilted on its side, and never came all the way back. The medical bills came after. They were enormous. The house had been hers from her parents, a small stucco place in West Phoenix with a lemon tree in the back. Wolf sold it to settle the debt. The closing was yesterday morning. He handed the keys to a young couple with a toddler and a Labrador, and they were so kind and so nervous, and so excited about their first house that Wolf could not bring himself to make them feel bad. He showed the woman where the lemon tree was. He drove away. He kept one thing from the house, Marin's wedding ring, on a thin leather cord around his neck. He kept one other thing, which was the panhead. And on the kitchen counter, he left a folded American flag, Marin's father's flag, from the Second World War. He left a note. It said, "This belonged to a good man. Please keep it somewhere your boy can see it when he's older." He didn't sign it. This morning, he got on the panhead at 5:30. The sky was pink. He rode east on the old highway, not the interstate, because the interstate makes a man think about getting somewhere, and Wolf was not trying to get somewhere. He was trying to leave somewhere. He had no destination. He had a half tank of gas, a sandwich, a canteen, $312 in cash, and a credit card that still worked. He told himself he would ride until the bike stopped, and then he would figure out what to do. Believe me, he meant it. 90 miles out of Phoenix, he pulled into a roadside rest stop because his lower back was knotted up the way it gets when a man passes 60. A concrete picnic table under a metal sunshade. A vending machine broken since the Clinton years. No other cars. Wolf sat down at the table and started to eat without thinking. He chewed slow. He thought about Marin's hands, about how she used to fold laundry on Sunday afternoons. About nothing. This is where it turns. About halfway through the sandwich, he felt something. Not heard. Felt. The way you can feel a person looking at you across a room. He turned his head slow, and there she was. A German Shepherd. Female. Maybe 5 years old. Dusty. Thin under the coat. She was lying in the shade of a creosote bush about 10 feet from the picnic table, watching him eat. Not begging. Not whining. Just watching with steady amber eyes. She had a collar. The collar had a tag that caught the sun. Wolf ate the rest of his sandwich. The dog watched. When he was done, he tore the last quarter of the sandwich in half and tossed it onto the dirt near her. She did not lunge. She got up, sniffed it once, and ate it in 2 bites. Then she sat down and looked at him again. Wolf said nothing. He got on the bike. The panhead caught on the second try. He rolled onto the highway and did not look back. 20 miles east of the rest stop, the panhead started running hot, and Wolf glanced in his mirror. That's when he saw her. Way back. A dark shape on the shoulder, running. He pulled the bike to the side and shut the engine off. He sat there in the silence of the open desert. 3 minutes. 4. The shepherd came up the shoulder at a trot, tongue out, ribs working hard, and she came right up to the bike and sat down and looked up at Wolf and waited. She did not bark. She just waited. Wolf stared at her for a long time. He had not asked for this. He had a bike that would maybe last another 500 miles, and after that he had nothing in this world. He could not take care of a dog. He could not take care of himself. He took the canteen off his belt. He cupped his left hand and poured water into it and held it out to her. She drank. 3 handfuls. She licked his palm clean. He poured a 4th. She drank that too. He said, "You cannot follow me." The dog looked at him. He said, "Go on, go home." The dog did not move. Wolf sighed. He started her up. He rode east. He did not look in the mirror for 10 miles, and when he finally did, the shoulder behind him was empty, and something in his chest went tight, and he told himself that was relief. By sundown, he was on the empty rim of Tucson, in a trucker motel on the east side. Gravel lot. Flickering vacancy sign. Wolf paid cash. $42. He parked the panhead right outside his door. He sat down on the edge of the bed. He put his face in his hands. 20 minutes later, he stepped outside just to stand in the cool air and breathe. And there she was. The shepherd. Lying flat on the concrete walkway about 3 feet from his door, head on her paws, eyes closed, breathing in and out like a thing that had finally found the only safe place in the whole desert. The motel was 30 miles from where he had last seen her. 30 miles. She had run 30 miles to be at his door. He cleared his throat. He said, "You stay outside." The shepherd opened one eye. She closed it again. Wolf went back into the room. He shut the door. He stood in the dark a long minute. Then he opened the door again. He filled the ice bucket with cold tap water, brought it out, set it down near her. She lifted her head and started drinking. He went back inside. He lay down on the bed in his clothes. He did not sleep for a long time. The room was too quiet. Marin was not in the next room. Marin was not anywhere. In the morning, the shepherd was still there, sitting up, watching the gravel lot as if she were guarding the bike. Wolf walked across the road to a gas station, with the shepherd trailing 4 feet behind. He bought a 5-pound bag of cheap kibble and a plastic bowl. He filled the bowl. The shepherd ate slow, dignified, never taking her eyes off him for long. Wolf crouched in front of her on his heels. He said, "Listen. This is the last meal. I cannot keep you. There is nothing out there for me and less for you. You should go back. Somebody is missing you." The shepherd put one paw on his boot. Light. Just the paw. Wolf felt that paw straight through the leather and straight up into his chest, and for a second he thought he might cry, which would have been the first time in 12 months. He stood up fast and turned away. He kicked the bike over. He rode east. He did not look in the mirror for 20 miles. Then he could not stand it anymore. And there she was. A dark shape on the shoulder, way back running. She had figured out how to follow a motorcycle. Day 3. New Mexico. The highway had narrowed to 2 lanes through scrub and red rock. Wolf had stopped trying to stop her. He took his brakes shorter so she could catch up faster. He poured water into his hand twice a day. He bought her a second bag of kibble in a town called Lordsburg and a real metal bowl for $2. He did not give her a name. Names are commitments, and Wolf was not making any commitments. In his head, he just called her the dog. But there were moments, riding the long, flat, empty miles, when he could feel her back there even when he wasn't looking, and something in him was not entirely alone for the first time in a long time, and he did not know what to do with that. Then the truck came. They were on a curve outside Deming. The shepherd was running 60 yards behind on the shoulder, and a flatbed semi was coming the other way, and a pickup was passing the flatbed on the dotted line, and the pickup saw the dog too late and swerved. He swerved away from her. He was trying not to hit her. But his side mirror clipped her on the shoulder, and she went down rolling in the gravel, and the pickup kept going without stopping. Wolf saw it in the mirror. He locked up the back brake, swung the bike around in a fishtail of gravel, and rode back. He found her sitting up, panting, eyes wide, a long bloody scrape down her right shoulder and a smaller cut on her muzzle. She was not crying. She was just looking up at him with that same steady amber gaze, except now her right front paw would not bear weight. Wolf knelt in the dirt next to her. His hands were not steady. He said, "Easy. Easy, girl." He took the canteen off his belt. He poured water onto the cut on her shoulder. She flinched. She didn't bite. He tore a strip from the bottom of his cotton shirt, and he wiped the wound clean. He used a second strip to bandage it loose. His hands worked the way they used to work on Pete's neck, on that wet curve outside Prescott, and he had to push that memory down hard because he could not afford it right now. When the bandage was tied, he sat back on his heels and looked at her. She looked at him, and for the first time, he reached out and put his hand flat on the top of her head, between her ears. Her fur was hot from the sun. She closed her eyes for 1 second. Then she opened them again. That is when he saw the tag. He had been seeing the tag for 3 days, glinting on her collar, and he had not once reached for it. He didn't want to know her name. He didn't want to know who she belonged to. Because if he knew, then he would have to do something. But now her shoulder was bleeding because of him, more or less, because she would not be on this highway if he had not ridden east, and so he reached out and he turned the tag over in his rough fingers. The tag was old. The brass was worn smooth on the edges. It had 2 lines stamped into it. The first line said Ruby. The second line was a phone number. Wolf sat in the dirt next to her for a long minute. Then he stood up. He walked back to the bike. He pulled out the little flip phone his nephew had given him after Marin died and made him promise to keep charged. He dialed the number. It rang 4 times. Then a recorded woman's voice said, "The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service." He tried again. Same voice. He closed the phone. Ruby was watching him. He crouched in front of her. He said, "Well, Ruby." He said her name out loud for the first time, and the sound of it in the desert air felt like the click of a key turning in a lock. He said, "Looks like we got a problem." He could have left her there. He thought about it. He could have called animal control, handed her off, ridden east. That was the smart move. Wolf looked at her bandaged shoulder. He looked at the empty highway. He looked at the long blue distance. He took off his bandana. He folded it twice. He laid it on the back rack of the panhead, on top of the small red fuel can, making a kind of platform. He patted it. He said, "Up." Ruby looked at him. He patted it again. "Up, girl." Ruby gathered her 3 good legs under her, and she jumped. She landed on the back rack neat as a cat. She turned around once, twice, and she lay down on the bandana with her head on her paws, and she looked at him as if to say, "Finally." He stared at her for a second. Then he laughed. He laughed out loud in the desert. One short bark of laughter that surprised him so much he had to put his hand over his mouth. He had not laughed in a year. He got on the bike. He rode slow, 40 miles an hour. He did not want to bounce her. They stopped at a gas station outside Las Cruces, and the kid pumping diesel stared, and Wolf stared back, and the kid did not say anything. That night they slept in a field off the highway. Ruby slept against his back. He did not push her away. Sometime around 3 in the morning he woke up and she was awake too, watching the stars, and he watched the stars with her for a while, and he thought about Marin, and he did not cry, but it was close. In the morning he asked a man at a diner where the nearest library was. Las Cruces, 20 miles back. Wolf turned the bike around. At the library, a young librarian in a green sweater took one look at the dusty old biker with the bandaged shepherd on his back rack, and she did not ask any questions either. She held a little wand to Ruby's shoulders, found the microchip, read the number off, typed it into a national pet database. 20 seconds later a name and an address came up on the screen. The name was a kennel. Cal Service K9 Foundation. Address in eastern Arizona, near a town called Snowflake. The phone number worked. A woman answered. Her voice was kind and tired. Wolf explained as best he could. The woman on the other end was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Oh, sweetheart. You'd better come up here. There's something I need to tell you in person." Wolf spent that night in a campground outside Las Cruces, and he did not sleep well, because he had a feeling he was about to learn something he could not unlearn. In the morning he rode out at dawn. Ruby on the back rack. Stick with me now. This is where it all becomes something else. The kennel was a low cinder block building with a metal roof, and a chain link run out back where shepherds and a Belgian Malinois were running drills. The woman who came out to meet them was in her 60s, sun-creased, gray braid down her back. Her name was Edith. She knelt down in front of Ruby and put her hands on either side of Ruby's face, and her own face crumpled, and she said, "Oh, girl. Oh, sweet girl. Where have you been?" Then she stood up, wiped her eyes, and she invited Wolf inside for coffee. She poured it black into a chipped mug. She sat down across from him at a wood table. And she told him. Ruby had been bred and trained at this kennel from the time she was a puppy. She had been placed 3 years ago with a young Marine named Cal Hendricks. He was from a small town in eastern Arizona. He had done 2 tours in Afghanistan. He had come home with the kind of quiet, hollow-eyed look that men come home with. Ruby was placed with him as a psychiatric service dog. She had been good for him. Cal had been planning to go back into the reserves as a trainer. Then 2 years ago last March, Cal had been killed in a training accident. Live fire exercise. Friendly fire. Edith said this part fast and quiet. He was 28. After Cal died, Ruby had gone to live with his mother, Maureen, outside Snowflake. Maureen had been 71. She had outlived her only son by 16 months. And then last spring she had died too, a stroke in her kitchen, and the neighbors had found her after a day, and they had let Ruby out into the yard, and Ruby had not come back. Edith said, "We've been looking for her for 6 weeks. Flyers. Every shelter in the state. I thought a coyote had got her. And then you call me from a library in New Mexico." Wolf did not say anything. He looked at Ruby, who was lying on the linoleum floor at his feet, her bandaged shoulder rising and falling slow. Edith said, "There is one more thing." She went to a filing cabinet and pulled out a manila folder. Inside was a photocopy of a small-town newspaper page. An obituary. Cal Hendricks, 28, beloved son. The obituary had a paragraph at the bottom that Edith pointed to. Wolf leaned forward and read it. It said, "Cal is survived by his service dog Ruby, who he loved more than anything in this world. Ruby is looking for a quiet home with a man who keeps moving." Wolf read it twice. Edith said softly, "Cal wrote that himself. He had a feeling, I guess. He had it in his will. We were never sure what it meant." Wolf got up. He walked outside without saying anything. He stood in the gravel lot with his hands on his hips and stared at the high country sky and did not say anything for a long minute. Ruby came out behind him, limping a little, and sat down beside his right boot. Edith stayed inside. She knew enough to stay inside. Wolf looked down at Ruby. He said, "Your boy." He said it quiet, almost a whisper. He said, "Your boy was named Cal." He said, "I'm sorry I didn't know." He stood there a while longer. He thought about a young Marine he had never met. He thought about a mother who had outlived her son and died in a kitchen. He thought about a dog who had walked out of a yard 6 weeks ago and somehow had found a man on a panhead in the open desert and had run 30 miles in the dark to sleep against a motel door. He went back inside. He sat down. He said to Edith, "Ma'am." He said, "I'd like to ride this dog back to her boy. To his grave. I'd like her to see him one time. Then I'd like to bring her back here if she wants to come back. And if she doesn't, I'd like to ask if I might keep her." Edith looked at him for a long time. Her eyes were full. She said, "Where's Cal buried, Mr. Hennessy?" Wolf said, "I don't know." Edith said, "He's in a little veteran cemetery 170 miles south of here, near Tucson." Wolf nodded. He said, "That's about right." Then he said, "May I have a bowl of water for her before we go?" The ride back was 200 miles. The long way on the old highway, slow, because Ruby was on the back rack on a folded wool blanket Edith had given them. Past the same gas station. Past the same rest stop. Past the very curve outside Deming where the pickup had clipped her. He rode through that curve at 30 miles an hour, the way a man drives through the place where someone he loves once almost died. The sun was setting behind him the whole way. They got to the veterans' cemetery just before dusk on the second day. White stones in neat rows on a low hill of yellow grass. A flagpole at the top with the flag coming down for the day. A caretaker with a rake waved Wolf through without questions when he saw the dog on the back rack. He pointed up the hill. Section C, he said, quietly, as if he understood why a man would ride this far to a small stone in a hilltop cemetery in the desert. Wolf parked the bike. He lifted Ruby down off the rack. She could put weight on the front paw now a little. She limped beside him as they walked up the hill. The grave was easy to find. The stone was simple. White marble. Cal Hendricks, United States Marine Corps. The dates of a young man. Below the dates in smaller letters it said, "A good man is gone." Below that smaller still it said, "And he loved his dog." Wolf stopped 20 feet away. He let Ruby go ahead alone. She walked up to the stone slow, on 3 good legs and 1/2 good one. She sniffed the base of the stone. She sniffed the grass. She walked all the way around the stone once. Then she lay down in front of it, with her muzzle on her paws, and she let out a long sigh, the kind of sigh dogs let out when they have been carrying something for a long, long time, and they are finally setting it down. Wolf sat down in the grass next to her. He wiped his eyes with his bandana, slow. He said, "Well, Marine, I brought her. I'm sorry it took us a while. I want you to know she's in good shape. She's eating. She's been keeping me alive, son, if you want the truth of it, because I have not been doing too well, and she has been carrying me on her back the whole way out here." He paused. He swallowed. He said, "You raised her right. I hope somebody told you that when you were here." The sun went down. The cemetery got cold the way the desert gets cold, fast, all at once. The caretaker came up the hill quietly with a folded canvas tarp and a thermos, and he set them down at Wolf's feet without a word, and he walked back down the hill. Wolf wrapped Ruby in the tarp. He drank the coffee. He stayed. He cried then. He cried out there on that hill, with his hand flat on Ruby's side, the way Marin used to put her hand flat on his back when he could not sleep. He cried for Marin first. He cried for 1 year of not crying, all at once. He cried for the lemon tree in the backyard he had left behind. He cried for Pete on the wet curve outside Prescott. He cried for a Marine he had never met, 28 years old, killed by his own friends. He cried for a mother in a kitchen who had outlived her boy and died of it. He cried for the dog under his hand, who had crossed half of 2 states looking for someone who would understand. And finally, last of all and almost shyly, he cried for himself. For Walter Hennessy, 61 years old, who had thought he was done. He stayed at the grave all night. He slept maybe an hour on the cold grass, with Ruby pressed up against him under the tarp. In the morning the caretaker came back with 2 more coffees and a breakfast sandwich, and he sat with Wolf in silence for 10 minutes and then went back to his rake. Some men know exactly what to do. That was 8 months ago. Wolf lives now in a small cabin outside Sedona, up in the Red Rock country. He rents it from a man he used to ride with. The cabin has 2 rooms, a wood stove, a porch, and a detached garage. In the garage, Wolf has set up a small repair shop. He works on old bikes. Panheads, knuckleheads, shovelheads. The bikes nobody else wants to fix anymore. He charges what people can pay. Sometimes he charges nothing. Old bikers come up the gravel drive from all over the Southwest, and they sit on the porch and they drink coffee with him, and they tell him about their wives, living and dead, and he listens. The panhead is parked under the porch overhang. Last month Wolf built a sidecar for it. He welded it himself out of an old fender and a Volkswagen wheel. He lined it with a sheepskin pad. The sidecar is for Ruby. Her shoulder healed up clean. She has a small scar on her muzzle that the kids who come up here love to ask about. Wolf tells them she got it saving his life on a desert highway, which is the truth even if it sounds like a tall tale. Ruby rides in the sidecar now when Wolf goes into town. She wears goggles. She sits up straight with her ears in the wind and her tongue out the side of her mouth, and people on the side of the road stop and stare and smile, and Wolf nods to them as he rides past, slow, never in a hurry anymore. The wedding ring is still on the leather cord around his neck. Marin's father's flag, he found out where it ended up. The young couple in the Phoenix house framed it and hung it above the boy's bed. They sent Wolf a photograph through Edith. It's on his refrigerator. Next to it, a photograph of Cal Hendricks in his dress blues. Young face. Steady eyes. Hand on Ruby's head. Wolf looks at that picture every morning while his coffee is brewing. He doesn't say anything to it. He doesn't have to. The Marine knows. Sometimes in the evening, Wolf sits on the porch and Ruby sits at his feet, and they watch the sun go down over the red rocks. The horizon turns purple. The wind dies. The cabin gets quiet the way the desert gets quiet, all at once. Wolf rests his hand on Ruby's head, between her ears. She closes her eyes. He thinks about a morning a year and 4 months ago, when he sat on a bike on an empty desert highway and looked in a cracked mirror and saw a dark shape running, and he did not understand, and he was not ready, and the world was an empty place. He understands now. Believe me. He understands. She didn't follow me to be saved, Wolf says sometimes, when an old biker on the porch asks him about the dog. She followed me to save me. And the old biker always nods, because old bikers know. They have all been saved by something. A dog. A wife. A friend on a wet curve. A long road that didn't end the way they thought it would. Most of them don't know it until much later, when the dust has settled and the engine has cooled and the only sound left is the steady breathing of the creature at their feet, who is still there, who is still there, who is still there.